is fun. You're going to learn a lot of stuff about grabbing
But you're
puppies.
happy
Didn't
now.
even know.
Okay, Renee, you'll have
We
to
don't
take your
know.
hand down because it looks like he's got a growth coming out. It keeps flipping out.
That's what
So,
it felt like too.
just speak out. You don't have to yell or anything. Just speak out. Sorry, I have a problem with it. Grayson?
What were the fun activities and games you played when you were my age?
We like to play board games, and we like to play out. We played outside. We played Rover, Red Rover, Come Over, something like that. That was fun. And kick the can. Played hopscotch and jacks. Love to play those things.
I like to play kick the can. We used to play that a lot as kids in the neighborhood. Have you ever played that?
No.
Oh, hide and
Well,
seek.
maybe I have.
Hide and seek.
It's a lot like hide and seek.
We like to play that. We like to play with friends.
When you were little, what did you want to be when you were my age, and what would you want to be when you grew up?
I didn't have any idea. I just didn't know.
I don't remember much except I like the movies and I thought maybe it'd be fun to be a movie star.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Mine?
Both.
I liked English. Liked recess. That wasn't a subject, but PE, English, music.
I like the math subjects. I like math and physics and those subjects. But I kind of liked all my classes. I didn't have any that I didn't like, so I enjoyed school.
I did too. Always looked forward to it starting.
Tell us about the pets you had throughout your childhood.
Hey, we had cats. We had Tabby Cat. She was wonderful. She was a good cat. Or I remember Nana making bread, and she had the doughy hands. Tabby would come and stand up by Nana. Nana would pick off some dough and hold it, and dip it, and Tabby would hold her mouth up, and she'd put it right in her mouth. Then she'd chew it. It was all crackly and funny. So that's what we had.
I think mine was bantam chickens. We every year we would buy some. Dad would buy some little chicks that we'd raise to eat, and then we always had some bantam chickens, and they were all in together. Then one time I remember we caught a wild duck, and we put it in the chicken pan in the chicken coop because it had a top on, and they couldn't get out. And the duck got real tame, and we'd let it out of the pen, and it'd fly around, and it'd come back home. It's 'cause, good food.
What was your favorite hobby or sport while growing up?
I loved softball. And it seemed like when the weather was good, we'd come home and we'd get out in the street in front, and the boys from up above would come down and we'd hit balls. And then our backyard, Nana has that big garden, and they plow it, and we'd have a baseball diamond out there. Really liked softball.
As far as sports or entertainment, my dad didn't get married till he was 40, so he was 44 when I was born, and so by the time I was 10 or 11, you see, he was over 50, so we didn't play a lot of sports with my dad, but we did start hunting early, and I remember as a boy no older than probably Grayson and Garrett, I'd go out hunting with my dad and my brother Clint, and by the time we were 12 or 13, we would go across the Cold Creek. We called it creek. Nobody ever said creek back in those days. But we'd go across the creek, and it was all sagebrush. There was no development on the east side of town then, and go in the sagebrush and hunt jackrabbits. They were a nuisance, so any of the farmers and that were always anxious to get rid of them. But so we used to go hunting, and then pheasant season, we'd go pheasant hunting and enjoyed doing that. And then as far as sports, though, about the only thing, they didn't have all soccer or lacrosse or many of the sports that the kids can get involved in now. No youth football, no youth basketball. So the only organized sport was Little League, like Little League baseball, and that came in when Chad was a boy more than when I was. But then when I was a late teenager, I played fast pitch softball in the Industrial League, played out center field. Enjoyed that.
Entertainment, I remember we loved to go to movies, and so on the Saturday, for the Saturday matinee, we'd have a dime, go to the movie.
And then too, I'd go swimming a lot. We lived just a block from the swimming pool, and I used to be a locker boy, so I could go swimming free. You know, they had lockers, and you just let the people in to their lockers. They didn't have their own keys while they're swimming, and so I used to go swimming a lot. By being a locker boy, I could get in free. So did a lot of that when I was a kid.
What were each of your parents like?
You go ahead.
We always had a good time in our family, and but they expected things from us. They expected us to practice, and always on Saturday, we called it the Saturday's work, and Mother and I would do the house cleaning, get the house all cleaned up on Saturday. I don't know, they were just fun. We played games together, board games and things like that. I remember my dad, he would come home and he'd say, let's go for a ride. And so we would all get in the car. That was a real fun thing to do, and I'll go get an ice cream cone. Except Nana, she would have an ice cream cone, she'd eat about 2 bites, and then my father would finish it off for her.
My dad was and mother, they had hard lives. My dad, of course, he was born in 1888. And back in those days, if you finished when you finished 8th grade, that was about like equivalent to finishing high school now. So he went to work full time as a painter, because his father was a painter and his grandfather was a painter, sent to St. George by Brigham Young to supervise the painting of the St. George Temple and then the Manti Temple. And so there's three generations of painters there. And so he went to work full time at age 14 and painted for 56 years until he was 70 years old. And hard worker. They'd work 6 days a week. It wasn't any 40-hour a week. It was full 6 days a week. Hard worker. Integrity was, if I could just say one word, that would probably to identify him. He would last thing he would ever do is he would never think of cheating anybody, and he would charge less than the job was worth, and much less if it was someone that was in need. I remember one time when I was painting with him, my uncle and my cousin and my dad and myself, and we finished up a job on a Saturday at noon, and he said, well, let's go over and paint this lady's kitchen. And he said, we won't get paid as much on this one if it's okay. And so we go over there, and he had some paint left over for some other jobs, so we all 4 painted her kitchen, and with 4 of you painting, and it was a big kitchen, but 4 of us did it in 2 or 3 hours. And the total he charged her for paint and labor was 0. And so
My dad always expected us to do our very best. He always said, if you're going to do anything, you do the best that you can. I appreciate that, yeah.
my mother had a hard life too. She was the oldest girl of a large family that lived on a farm in Minersville, and she had to quit school after the 11th grade to to help at home with because she had a lot of brothers, and my grandfather was just barely making it on the farm there in Minersville, and so she had to quit school after the 11th grade. And that's probably why both of my parents encouraged me and my brothers to go to college, is because they didn't get a chance to get the education that they wanted. But she had a hard life. She married Vance's dad when she was, I think she was 19, and she was widowed when she was 22 or 23. He was killed in a train accident, and so she had a very, very hard life. And then a few years later, she married my dad. So, but she didn't have anything in material things when she was married to Vance's dad, and she didn't have material things when she was married to Dad either. So I admire them both, and I never once heard either of them complain about not having material things.
What do you feel is the most valuable thing your parents taught you?
I think to work and to be honest in your dealings with people, because they were great examples for that. And their word was better than any written contract. You didn't need it with either of my parents.
I think to do the best I could always do, and to have a schedule, and to be organized.
What effect did growing up during the Depression have on you, and how has that affected your current style of living?
I don't remember the Depression. I don't remember that it impacted me at all.
She's much younger.
Not much.
Her dad. Well, he didn't. Teachers then, like now in Utah, don't make a lot of money, and so her dad didn't. But he had a steady income, and if I was born at the tail end of the Depression, and if there's one thing you can do without when you have very little money, it's painting your house. And so Dad worked with the CCCs, what they called it, is Civilian Conservation Corps or something. They'd go out and do public works projects. He was painting with them some, and in between jobs and whatever it took to, and then a lot of times he would trade the work for meat or something else if he was painting for a farmer or something like that. So, but we grew up. We always had plenty to eat. I mean, we had beans every Monday. That was wash day. Everybody washed on Monday for some reason. That's the only day they washed. They weren't automatic washers, you see. And they'd wash on Monday. So every Monday we had beans, and I love beans to this day. But it was, we didn't have a lot of clothes. I had a pair of shoes and a shirt and pants and maybe one change of clothing. I was well into high school, and I remember needing a sport coat when I was playing in the group in the band, and so my mom took me over and bought a cheap sport coat because I'd been the only one that didn't have one. But that didn't ever bother me, that we didn't have a lot of clothes, because a lot of the other kids didn't either. So or material things, toys. I never had a bicycle, it was later that I realized that we were poor, but it never impacted me then, and I have no regrets about it. I didn't really need anything more than I had.
What prophet was influential to each of you during your growing up years, and what do you remember most about his service and counsel that impacted your lives?
It was George Albert Smith. I remember David O. McKay. I was in college at the time, but he came to our graduation and spoke to us, and we were all able to go and shake his hand. I don't have other, and that's too bad to say that, I don't have any other.
Well, let's see. I've lived about, I think, 9 prophets. the one that, as I was growing up, and the one that I remember the most was David O. McKay. The others, you know, President Kimball, and I was bishop when President Kimball was the prophet, and so coming to conference every time and seeing him, you know, I have special feelings for him, but the one that I hate to say it, but that really looked like a prophet, you know, tall, stately, handsome, you know, David O. McKay. I mean, he just stood out just by his looks, you know, as well. You know, you just looked at him and respected him, and he kind of looked like you'd think maybe a prophet might look. And I remember seeing him walking. While I was going to the U and walking down the street in Salt Lake downtown. That was before the days when they had to have security men with him, and so he was just walking alone. I remember just standing there and just kind of staring at him as he walked by, because he had such a magnificent, stately look about him, and so he's always kind of been one of my favorites.
Oh, I thought you meant when we were just young, real young. President Kimball, I think, was one of my favorites. He was just so down to earth and so kind, and you know, he'd just see you and you were his best friend. And we had a big area conference, you know, in California, and I was able to sing with the choir, and he was just so wonderful to all of us. Just came out to all of us. And, yeah, I loved him very much.
What interests or activities did Granny participate in as a teenager?
Interests and activities? Well, music. I was always in the orchestra, and I like to sing, and I like to play ball.
She was one of the popular girls too, Hillary.
What about you, Papa?
Well, I mentioned before, you know, school activities. I did get in the band when I was in junior high, and so that was about all that I participated in. I was too small. I was very small and slow maturing physically, and so I couldn't play any sports in high school until I was a senior, and I went out for football when I was a senior, and I weighed 142 pounds in my uniform. So
he was a good player.
So that
I saw that touchdown.
well, I'm the only guy that made a touchdown on every pass that was thrown to me. One. They threw one pass to me, and I caught it and made a touchdown. So.
Okay. What do you guys have in common?
Music? You like concerts? Plays? Like to go out to eat.
Yeah, we like to eat. And probably the most thing,
It's our family. All of you guys here. You make us happy. Things you do, the kind of people you are.
best family in the world.
You all do what you're supposed to do. You're talented, and you're beautiful and good looking, and just everything you do, we love you so much.
I've always felt if I could be as good a person as any one of you in this room, I'd be satisfied with my life.
What are some of your differences?
She snores and I don't.
Well, I don't know what kind of joint at the hip if you have to make. We go out to eat, we both order the same.
Okay, Mom, what was the first thing about Dad that you were attracted to?
Well, I thought he was really good looking. I knew he was smart. And No, just a good guy. We were in the orchestra together. And, just appealed to me.
What about you, Dad? What was the first thing?
Well, she was popular and she's beautiful. That's a good start. And then after I got to know her, I liked her even more, you know.
So has that changed over the years, those first impressions?
Well, she's still my first choice.
Easily.
Okay, Mom. You have an uncanny ability to remember what everyone wore at every special event. What was Dad wearing the first time you noticed him?
Swimming suit. Oh, he was a neat diver and swimmer. He was always over to the pool, and I would go there, and that's how I would see his doll, watching him dive. You know, I thought, oh my gosh.
Did he have a tank top on?
No,
It was one of those log pieces.
no, he had a white suit,
I did?
short sleeves, yeah. And his legs are so nice. You know, I always thought, wow, those are neat looking legs. Yeah.
You all like to see my legs?
Tell us about your first kiss.
I don't remember.
I don't either.
What were you wearing? I'll bring back the details.
I do not remember that.
I don't either.
First date?
I don't remember that either. She was 15. That was before the days that they ever, don't date before you're 16. They never had that rule. So I remember first date was at 15. You were 15. I was 17. So.
Did you think you'd end up living permanently in Cedar City since you grew up there and your families were there?
Not really, because we both wanted an education, and I didn't know where we'd live, but that really didn't. I didn't think about that. Did you?
No. While I think we both enjoyed Cedar City as a youth and a good place to grow up and that. For one thing, there were no jobs for civil engineers in Cedar City, so I never even considered living in Cedar City permanently. Never even considered it.
What was it like going to England to live after growing up in a small town? Was it a big adjustment?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was. I guess it was an adjustment because we had all the buses and the tubes and all of that to learn to.
Well, when you consider the extensive travel that I did as a youth, having been as far north as Salt Lake City, this is by the time I was 21, I hadn't been farther north than Salt Lake, farther south than Las Vegas, farther west than Panaca or Piotr, Nevada. If they're farther west than Las Vegas, they probably aren't. And the farthest east I'd been was Panguitch. So the fact that going to a foreign country was quite an experience. Although I did get to go when I was went to ROTC summer camp. They flew some of us to Florida for a day, 2 days, for a big firepower demonstration, and I was one of the lucky ones that got to go. So I thought going to Florida, having done that non-traveling before was pretty neat, and then going to a foreign country like England was special. But our first impression, we arrived in England in January of 1956, and that's winter over there, of course, and it was cold. It was the coldest winter they'd had for over 80 years, and being an engineer, I like to know where north is, and it was overcast. It had been there for about 3 weeks before we could see where the sun was. And the streets, none of them are in any rectangular shaped pattern. It's, follow the little cow trail from 1,000 years ago or something like that, the roads did. And so I was disoriented for 3 weeks until the sun came out and I could tell, start to get my bearings a little bit. But it was just the whole culture of it was, and I think the biggest thing about England initially, and I later came to appreciate it more, was their standard of living compared to ours here. Ours was so much higher than theirs. But then as I went to other places like Morocco, I mean, I was so glad to get back to England, that high standard of living. But when we were in England, for instance, very few people had telephones. Very few people had cars. Very few had refrigerators.
Say the same thing.
But everybody had a TV. A lot of them just rented a TV, but everybody had a TV, but nobody had refrigerators. And so that was a big adjustment. We bought a refrigerator out of the BX, but we bought an American one, so you had to have a transformer to transfer from their electric system to ours. But we couldn't get by without a refrigerator.
No, but it was, right at first, wasn't very long after we'd been there that it was really hard for me because Donald got pneumonia and we just got lost him. Had to go to the hospital and here I was all alone. And, you know, I didn't
This was
know.
about 3 weeks or a month after we got there.
Yeah, and I didn't know people. I didn't, know the culture yet or anything. And that was really difficult. And when I would come home at night, and the weather was so cold that the pipes were all on the outside of the homes. And they broke, and so all of this was dripping down on me on my bed from the ceiling, the water from the pipes that
So she
burst.
called the landlord in the middle of the night that she had on.
Sleeping in coats and everything, trying to keep warm, and I was all by myself. So that was a little hard for me.
And the heating, there wasn't central heating. The little flat that we rented, we'd heat it with what they called a paraffin heater. It's kind of like a coal oil. In the room that you were going to be in, you'd carry that little heater in there, and I still don't realize or understand how the fumes didn't do you in, but you'd carry that heater if you're going into the living room to watch TV. You'd carry the paraffin heater in and set it in the room. And if you're going into bed, you'd take it into the bedroom with you for a while. You didn't leave it in all night, but it was cold in those houses in England. The same with the tub. If you're going to take a bath, you take the paraffin heater in the bathroom and leave it so it'd be warm enough for you to take a bath. I remember going to visit a friend at work. He was English, and his wife had a baby, and he took me in to show me the baby, and there was ice on the inside of the window. That's how cold it was. So we had a big adjustment from dry Utah weather to the humid, cold weather in England. But that was because we got there in the winter.
But we had such a good time.
Yeah, we
saw
loved
so
it.
many things, and he made enough money that we could do, go to the opera, the ballet, or whatever. And so, travel, it was really good.
Then the American salaries were much higher than the English salaries. I think it's different now because the cost of living, the English, how they existed, I don't know, and what they would get paid. But when we'd hire English civilians to work with the Air Force, they had an agreement with the English government. They didn't want us to pay them more than the English would make, and so you'd see an American secretary civilian sitting next to an English secretary doing the same work, and one would get paid about a fourth of what the other one did, the English one did. And so it made it good for us because as a second lieutenant, I was making as much as a full colonel in the RAF, the equivalent of full colonel, group captain. And so it financially it worked out okay. But we didn't have anything going over. We didn't have a car, and so I bought my first car in the BX there, and so you could get a deal on it. And in the time that it took, three months to get it, we had a little bit saved, but it took 3 months because you had to pay cash for it, and so we were able to save enough to pay cash for it. And so the new Volkswagen took it out the door, including tax and license, was $1,100. So that was a little blue Volkswagen. We drove around there. And so we have fond memories of England, though, very fond memories.
Let's take too soft.
All right.
What caused you to get more serious about the gospel in your early married life?
I think with me, it was before Alicia was born. I figured that if I wanted you were the only one we had at the time, to grow up to be the kind of woman I wanted you to be, that I better be a better example.
I think it was that for me too. Knowing as we had a family, we wanted to have that foundation.
What have you learned from your years in the military that has stayed with you?
Well, I lucked out and didn't fight through any wars. Vance went through all the wars, so I served 28 years total, with counting my reserve time. And I think what I learned is some discipline. I learned to be quite patriotic, and a lot of respect for those that were willing to defend the country if they were called upon to do so. Like I say, my older brother Vance, he fought in the World War II, Vietnam, and Korean War, and I was in during the Vietnamese War, but never got called to active duty during that time. So, and then I learned, we've learned since we retired, the benefits by staying in until you retire. So we have the commissary and BX privileges and medical if we needed it, and also some travel privileges that we've never used. We've never taken advantage of military travel.
If you had to choose your career choice over again, would you choose civil engineering? And if not, what would you choose?
I had a great career, and it was very challenging and interesting, and that. So I have no regrets about going into civil engineering. I think if I didn't do that, one that would have probably appealed to me is be to teach, but at the college, university level. And how about your professional career?
So why did you move to El Monte, and what's your favorite memory there?
Do you remember?
We saw the new homes that were being built there, and Donald's brother and his wife, they wanted to move there, and so we thought, well, we'll look at the homes and see what they're like. We had tried to buy one when we lived in South Pasadena, and that didn't work out.
We were going to buy a lot in Monterey Park, and it didn't really work out, but we really had never heard of El Monte, and then my brother said that he was going to buy one there, so we ended up buying two houses, one that's 2 houses away from him, and then after 4 years he moved. They move every 4 years anyway.
Tell us why Michelle was a latchkey kid, Renee, and why did you decide not to use your teaching degree full-time?
I decided that I wanted to go back to school, and I know that Donald wanted me to, because at one time he said if I hadn't have, he would have been disappointed. And I wanted
It's great insurance in case something happened to me.
And that's one reason that I did that. And Michelle was always responsible, and I thought that it would work out just fine. She was able to, the school was only a couple of blocks. It was right in with the residential district right there. She just had to walk up a couple of blocks, and there was a school. A lot of neighbors around that, she could have called on.
And the age?
I think she was between 6 and 7, but she was very responsible, because she'd come home and I would fix the casserole before I would go to school, and she'd come home, she'd put the casserole in the oven, and she would do her piano practicing, and then she could go out to play. We lived on a cul-de-sac, it was very safe, they just played the cul-de-sac. Then when Donald came home from work, which was a little after 5,
Because we got off at 4:30.
Dinner was ready and they'd eat, have the rest of the evening. And I didn't use my teaching at that time because I really wanted it just for insurance, and I wanted to be home with the children and just be, a housewife.
And
do
she
those
didn't like
things.
those surprises for substitute teaching.
I did a lot of substituting. I did that, but I preferred not to teach full-time.
Can you just tell us your favorite Almonte memory?
All my music programs and things I did. It's a wonderful memory.
I got a hole-in-one on the Twin Lakes Golf Course. Remember that? The Twin Lakes, when they had the Twin Lakes Golf Course down there just south of us. Clinton and I used to go down there and play quite often.
How old were you, Papa, when you started reading the scriptures on your own?
Well, I read them some on my own, but I'm embarrassed to say that I was a bishop before I had read the standard work completely through. And then I started to read them, study them regularly.
How and when did each of you gain your testimony?
I know immediately that I was, when we were younger, nobody took their scriptures to church. The kids didn't have scriptures or anything like that. It's different than what it
The
what it
kids
is now.
today know 10 times as much as the
Right.
kids about the scriptures and the beliefs of the church than we did then. 10 times as much.
Excuse me. I was in a meeting with Bishop Clough. He was our bishop. And it was a ward conference meeting. The Relief Society were meeting together. And that we were talking about things, and all of a sudden I had this flash, this feeling, and I knew immediately then that the church was true, and that I had a testimony of that. And that's the first time that had happened to me. And I must have been 30 something.
I think I was an adult too. I got along based on, I think, more my mother's testimony when I was young. But I think I was definitely an adult. I didn't have any experience like she had. Mine just kind of came gradually as I would study about it and then try to keep the commandments, and just pretty soon I just knew it was true. And because I don't think you can be given a testimony. I think a testimony has to be earned, and a little bit at a time. And you might have an experience like that, but you don't have experiences like that unless you're earning it to get to that point.
We were active in the church. We were doing head calling.
Tell us about some of the earthquakes you lived through while in California.
Courtney, Cameron would tell about the time they were down there, and we had this I was talking to Felice Smith on the phone, and all of a sudden this earthquake came, and we hurried and got under the door of Alicia's room, that little bedroom, and that was very scary, very scary.
It's kind of fun.
We were gonna that night go to take Cameron to Phantom of the Opera. Courtney was too young at that time, and I think he was a little worried.
He didn't enjoy it as much as he would have. He was kind of frightened that there's going to be another earthquake.
That was scary.
They're scary because you're so helpless, and they can come anytime. I remember that one when they were down there. It came at about 6:30 in the morning, and but there are a lot of different magnitudes. And I remember one time I was out working in the yard, and I was leaning over, and I thought, man, I'm getting dizzy for some reason. I looked up, and all of a sudden I could see a telephone pole going like that, and I knew it was an earthquake, that I wasn't dizzy. And I was talking to one fellow that during the earthquake of February the 9th of, when was that, 71 or 2. But I remember it was February 9th because it was my dad's birthday. But he was driving along the freeway, and he said it felt like he had 4 flat tires. And he pulled over because he couldn't believe, he said I'd had a flat tire before, but he said I had 4 flat tires, I was sure. I got out and all the tires were inflated. It was the earthquake. But they were, depending where you were. We were on our way to Utah once when they had another one, and we called our home teacher and told him where we had a key hidden, and he went in and checked to see what the damage was. We had things that had fallen off the mantle, and a lamp had fallen over and broken, and a few things like that. So it's pretty scary.
Well, that one that was the most scary was, who was home? Alicia? Michelle?
Well, I remember one.
When we had the couch in the family room there.
Mhm.
We ran in there, that was horrible.
Thing is, you don't know where it is or what it's going to do. If you're in the wrong place, I mean, that 71 earthquake, someplace, one apartment house, just the fault zone was right in the middle of it. It just went that way. A separation, about 4-foot difference in elevation. Just like that, you know. So, during that 71 earthquake as well, the Olive View Hospital, this multi-story hospital, 10 stories or something, and one of the wings just tipped over, the whole wing of the hospital, and a lot of people were killed.
We lost one of our best friends in the earthquake that was in San Francisco.
That was in '89, wasn't it? When Jackie Easton was driving there, and the top deck, she was in the lower deck of the freeway, and the top deck came right down on top of her. Killed her, car caught fire, she was incinerated. And tough thing is our good friend Jim, she is about the last body that, well, they recovered ashes.
He stood for 4 days.
4 days standing, waiting until they could pull away the debris, and then they found his car. And they didn't even live in the area. She'd gone down to help a friend get out of the hospital and take him back to her home in Sacramento to care for him. He just had surgery. So he was in the car just in front of her. And
so he lost his
15 seconds difference. They both had lived, but they were just in the wrong place at the right place at the wrong time, or wrong place at the right time, and both of them were killed.
I want to ask about your mission. Mom, can you tell us why you decided to go on a mission together? And Dad, how does the timing in which you received that call to Ireland tie in with the Joe Good story?
Well, when we were retiring and decided we were moving up here, we said within 3 years we'll go up to Salt Lake, to Sandy, we'll build our home, and then we'll go on a mission. And as the time got closer, I thought, oh, we can't go on a mission. You know, we can't do it. It just seemed like an enormous thing to me. I didn't know if I could do it. But, you know, it was the most wonderful time of our life. And what a shame it would have been if we didn't go, because it was so wonderful.
See, neither of us served a mission when we were young, because like Elder Sorensen in the conference today, I knew there were quotas. He was talking about the same situation, and one missionary per ward is all that could go. But I never once had a bishop or a priesthood leader talk to me about a mission, and Mom and Dad never did, because I'm sure they knew they couldn't afford it. And so neither of us had served. And then I think too, as we had the experience with baptizing Tish and Natalie,
Right.
that gave us a lot of joy, and our whole family was involved in both of those. And so
Had the lessons in our home, and so we kind of got a glimpse of.
And tell us about how you had so few days to prepare, and then how it worked out with the Joe Good and what he was waiting for.
Well, we had turned in our papers, and while there wasn't a place on there, but in the comments section, we wrote that we'd like to serve in Australia, New Zealand, or England. And we sent it in to Elder Maxwell. Michelle talked to him, and that's a whole other story.
He said to send it in, right?
I know,
Yeah, he said to send it to him. The state president said you don't do that, and I said, well, I'm just passing the message on. So he called Elder Maxwell's secretary, and she said, send it in to Elder Maxwell. And so my missionary papers didn't go to the missionary department, they went to Elder Maxwell, and so we thought for sure we were going to be called to Australia or New Zealand, because they'd been sent to Elder Maxwell. And we got our call, and it was to Ireland Dublin Mission. And we had only about 6 weeks to report. We weren't disappointed, we were just surprised. But so anyway, we were down at the MTC, and couples then just stayed in 8 days. And we were at the MTC. The day before we were to leave, another couple that was going to Ireland got an email or fax from the mission president in Ireland saying that we just found out you were coming. Could you tell us a little bit about yourselves? And so they said, did you get one of those? We said, no. And so we said, what they asked you to send them. So we said, maybe we better send him that too and let him know we're coming in case he doesn't know. It's good we did. He didn't know we were coming. This was the day before we were going to leave. So anyway, we faxed the stuff to him and from the MTC, and we got over there, and he'd had someone knowing that we were coming. He found someone find us a place down in Cork the day before to live, and he told us that morning, the night we got there, or the day we got there, he didn't tell us what. He said one of you's going up north and the other's going down to Cork, and he said, I'll tell you in the morning which is going where. Well, he sent us down to Cork, where there hadn't been a missionary couple for a couple of years, and so we said that morning he would get out there, and he said, here's the car you'll be renting from the mission. The zone leader will meet you in 3.5 hours at the roundabout east of Cork. And so I said to the president, what do we do? And he looked at us and he says, you do what you think needs to be done. That was the only instruction we had. So we got down there, the zone leader was there, and he took us by the church so we'd know where to go to church the next morning, drove us out to Ballincollig, which is a few miles outside of Cork, where they'd found a house for us the day before to live. And so that Sunday morning we went to church, and we, not knowing anybody, didn't know a soul, and it was a cold January day, and so we went to gospel doctrine class. It was taught by an Irish member she was about 30 years old at the time, and very good teacher. And after the class she said, I need to see you two right now. And we kind of wondered because we hadn't been there long enough to do anything wrong, but she needed to see us for us. So she took us into a little room, told us her name was Marguerite Good, and that she had been a member of the church for about 10 years, and that her husband Joe wasn't a member, and very anti-Mormon. They had 2 children, both of baptismal age, that she said Joe won't let them be baptized, he won't let me pay tithing. And she said that just a few days before, he had been diagnosed with MS, and he was only in his early 30s. And she said it caused him to start to think about life and his family, and so he said to her, I'll listen to the missionary discussions, but I don't want any young missionaries. And there hadn't been a missionary couple there for 2 years. They didn't know we were coming, and that Sunday morning we'd show up. She said, can you start teaching him tomorrow morning? He's off work this week. We hadn't even read the discussions. They didn't even cover them in the MTC. And so we started teaching Joe the next morning and baptized him that was in January, mid-January, or late January. We baptized him on St. Patrick's Day, less than 2 months later, and then his son and daughter as well. And but we knew from that experience why we were sent to Ireland instead of Australia.
Who is your favorite investigator on your mission and why?
Joe Good.
He was a good one.
Enough said.
He has lots of questions.
He was my best friend in Ireland. Unfortunately, he died at age 40.
Okay, how did you both develop such incredible self-discipline?
Like we're showing now?
Because everybody always looks at me and Alicia and says, boy, where'd you guys learn that stuff?
Well,
And we always say it was you.
I think our parents were disciplined, weren't they, Dawn?
Yeah.
Well disciplined.
Yeah.
Both our parents were.
Yeah, that's where we learned it definitely from my parents.
What are your favorite church-related and non-church-related songs?
My 2 favorite hymns are I Stand All Amazed and Love One Another.
Like,
Those are the ones songs I want at my funeral.
I stand all amazed and write praise to the man. There are so many, I can't list them all. I can't really say one favorite. There are a lot of favorites.
Did you say non-church too?
Non-church.
Do you have a non-church favorite?
I can't say one. I can say I like Burt Bacharach, I like George Gershwin, I don't know, just so many. I can't say one.
I don't know that I have a favorite song. My favorite musical, not even close, there's not a close second, is My Fair Lady. That's has great music and just it's a great story.
Not Blue Moon?
Oh, we
On the
have that.
cornet.
What was that other one that we had? I Can Dream, Can't I?
I Can Dream, Can't I? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
She doesn't sing that to me anymore, though.
What is your very favorite food?
Oh my gosh, very favorite food. Well, I don't know. I guess. Oh, Tosco's. I guess it is. I guess it is. Tosco's.
That's the Mandarin.
Those two.
Yeah, they're great. I like a good roast beef with dinner with mashed potatoes and gravy, or turkey dinner with mashed potatoes and gravy and veggies.
And always some ice cream.
What are your favorite cars that you've had?
Well, I like the little yellow convertible we had when we were first married, going to school at the U. We'd get up early in the morning, and it would be a beautiful spring day, and we'd get in the convertible and go out and ride around in some of those nice homes up there.
That was 2 or 3 weeks before I graduated. We went all through college and married without having a car.
Right, we rode the bus.
We had to buy a car just before I graduated so I could get to my job in California. But people didn't. And speaking of cars, people didn't have cars. 2 cars. I didn't know one family growing up that had 2 cars. Everybody had 1 car. When we went on our honeymoon to Las Vegas, I had to borrow my dad's car for 3 days, and so he had to get a ride to work with my uncle because that was the only car. But the Volkswagen,
I think that has the most
I got rid of it. It's got most memories
both our kids.
because we had it.
were
Both of them learned to
that,
drive
too.
in it, and we had it for 43 years. Our '62 VW. Then I like the Camry too. That Camry. The cars we've got now are fine, but that
Camry was
the old Camry,
Yeah.
the old Cameron's Camry is,
Ellie.
yeah, that was a good one. I like that.
What's your favorite vacation you've been on, and it could be your mission if you wanted it to be?
That was no vacation. That was hard work, but it was great.
But we saw all the beautiful country.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking, Israel, I think, but it wasn't a vacation. It was
It was
education,
vacation education. That was
that
by
was
far the most educative thing, but it wasn't a relaxing type. Relaxing, Hawaii. I think the last time we went where we did nothing but lay around Waikiki and eat and walk and we had no agenda. We'd seen everything we wanted to see, so we just hung out and relaxed. It was fun.
In fact, we're going in November.
We want to do the same thing.
So where's the one place you'd still like to go?
Oh, China.
Probably, we talked a little about that previously, and probably China, and then a Mediterranean cruise to see some of the. We haven't really been to much of in the way of the Mediterranean.
And can we come?
Yeah.
What are the very favorite church callings you've had? Just top 2 for each of you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, anybody wants to be a bishop's crazy, but it's the best calling probably you have. We're working in the trenches with the people, and that it's just a choice experiences. I had more spiritual experiences in the 8.5 years I was bishop than I've had in the rest of my life. And then my other, I think, favorite is probably teaching gospel doctrine because I learned so much.
I'd say Young Women's President, Relief Society President, and Choir Director.
What character traits are you most proud of in your children that you feel you passed on to them or taught?
Hard workers, wonderful mothers.
Treat their parents great.
They're very well disciplined.
They're just great examples for us, both of them.
What is your funniest memory about each of your daughters?
Oh,
Tell them about Michelle at work.
yeah, but you tell about Michelle. I'll tell
Oh, oh you tell them about that one.
Oh, well, you tell it. What did I do? He tells it.
Well,
It's so cute.
I worked when I was working for the Los Angeles County Flood Control District. That was, I think, Alicia and Michelle's first real job. They'd come down and work during the summers, kind of student workers. And I remember Michelle, she had skipped the grade, and so she was pretty young, for the grade she was in, and she was 16 years old, and she went in for the interview, I guess, and did fine, and they asked her when she could start. She says, I don't know, I'll have to go out and ask my mom.
I was sitting out in the car waiting. Very obedient.
Hold it right there. I'm out of tape and I've got to